Our story begins in Lynchburg, Virginia, the year 1919. Desmond Doss is born to Thomas Doss, a carpenter and a World War I veteran, and Bertha Doss, a devout Seventh-day Adventist. Desmond's father, struggling with the effects World War I had on him, was less active in Desmond's childhood, leaving it to his mother to raise him. She raised him as a Seventh-day Adventist like herself. Their beliefs are very similar to any other Christian religion with some minor differences. The Bible is their only source of their beliefs, and Desmond put them above all else. When he was a child, his father bought a large framed picture of the Ten Commandments, and next to the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," was a picture of Cain standing above his dead brother Abel with a bloody club. Desmond could not understand how a brother could do something like that, and so he vowed, for his love of God, that he would never take another's life. One day his father got drunk and got into a fight with Desmond's uncle. His father pulled out a gun and his mother stepped in to break it up. She got the gun and gave it to Desmond and told him to hide it. After that, Desmond vowed to never touch a gun again. Desmond learned love and compassion and the joy of helping people from his mother. Desmond's sister remembers a time when it was announced on the radio that there was an accident on Route 29 and they needed blood to save a woman's life. Desmond walked 3 miles, gave his blood to the hospital, and walked back. 2 days later, the hospital called asking for blood, and there he went again.
He was always helpful to the people,
said his brother Harold.
He was not the one that would give up. He did know how.
In 1941, Desmond was 22 and working at the Newport News Naval Shipyard when tragedy struck.
On December 7, 1941, Japan, like its infamous Axis partners, struck first and declared war afterwards. Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment, but more costly to Japan was the effectiveness of its foul attack in immediately unifying America in its determination to fight and win the war thrust upon it, and to win the peace that will follow.
A generation of American men would be sent overseas to fight against evil, and Desmond Doss wanted to be one of them. Due to his religion and his status as a conscientious objector, or pacifist, he was eligible for a deferment from the draft. But even though he couldn't fight, Desmond was determined to serve his country.
I pictured Christ for saving life,
he said.
I want to be like Christ and go saving life instead of taking life. That's the reason why I take up medicine.
But it wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. The Army initially rejected his request to be a medic, and he was sent to a rifle company in the 77th Division in South Carolina for basic training. He was not well liked by his fellow soldiers, who thought he was a coward. They called him Holy Joe and threw things at him, making fun of him relentlessly. One soldier, Ken the Fond, said,
I don't think I could have taken what that guy did. I don't think I could have taken it, but he hung in there.
Desmond remembers one man saying to him,
I swear to God, Doss, if you go into combat, I'm going to shoot you.
His officers were also less than tolerant of his refusal to bear arms and to work on Saturdays, which was his Sabbath. They convinced a hearing to discharge him on a Section 8 for mental instability. The officers soon gave up, though knowing that Washington would not allow a Section 8 based on religion. Desmond resisted this, and a threat to be court-martialed by one of his officers. After a month in the Army, he was allowed to go back to the medical corps. Desmond was shipped out into the Pacific Theater, where he served as a medic on Guam and Leyte before going to Okinawa in May 1945. Though the Germans had surrendered, the Japanese were fiercely defending Okinawa, and the Americans could not get past the heavily guarded Maeda Escarpment, which the soldiers had dubbed Hacksaw Ridge. Every time the soldiers would secure the top of the cliff, the Japanese would viciously return fire, causing the Americans to retreat back down. The firefight resulted in many casualties and wounded men on the American side. On May 5th, Saturday, Desmond Doss did not retreat with his fellow soldiers. He stayed on the ridge and for 12 hours rescued wounded soldiers under heavy fire, treating their wounds, dragging them to the end of the cliff, and lowering them down with a rope. Each time he saved a man's life, he prayed,
Lord, please help me get one more.
When the night had ended, he had saved 75 people. This act of courage and selflessness made Desmond's fellow soldiers see him for what he really was. A letter from the first lieutenant recommends Doss for a Medal of Honor. Everyone in the army had written Desmond off as a coward for not fighting and not touching a weapon, not realizing that he had such strong convictions that he wouldn't compromise. His actions, running into enemy territory without taking cover, to save lives of men who had ridiculed and despised him, showed that he was actually the bravest man in the army. This letter from the first lieutenant shows how Desmond's determination and courage changed his fellow soldiers' opinions of him, and made them realize what a genuinely selfless and great person he was. People who had hated him were alive because of him. A wound from a grenade and sniper bullet saw the end of Doss's combat medic career. When he was wounded, Desmond dropped his cherished pocket Bible on Hacksaw Ridge. When the men in his battalion heard, they scoured the ridge searching for it.
I'm in a corridor at our NBC studios. I want you to meet our principal subject, as he was on a day in October of 1945, when President Harry S. Truman bestowed on him our nation's highest award for valor, the Congressional Medal of Honor. He's unique in the military history of America because he won this honor in battle, even though he himself never carried a gun or weapon of any kind. The Army listed him as a conscientious objector. Now let's go in and meet this hero.
8 or 9 in position, folks, I remember.
Men who had made fun of him and wanted him dead were now in his debt. On October 12, 1945, Desmond was invited to the White House, where he received the Medal of Honor from Harry Truman. He made history as the first conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor. He died in 2006, but his legacy lives on today, and his actions at Hacksaw Ridge. He showed that there was significance in trying to save lives instead of taking them. He showed how being a medic was not hopeless or something to be shrugged off, but a job that could make a difference.
You can't always win. But when your buddies come to you and say they owe their life to you, what better reward can you get than that?
His kindness and bravery transcended the necessity to fight and kill. If the world could learn from Desmond Doss, there would be no more reason to fight.